Hi everybody, Jim Cipriani here to improve your life through employment. Today I wanted to talk about listening. I know that listening is kind of a cliche topic for leaders, overused. However, it's highly underutilized. Never does it fail that I'm in a conversation that I wish that somebody was listening a bit better, maybe even myself. So I think it's something that all leaders and people alike can benefit from. I think it's really the only essence that can help advance a business relationship is to be able to listen well. So I was at a get-together recently, small get-together, outdoors, socially distanced, so it was safe. But with me was a 20-something up-and-comer who we had hired on recently and needed to develop, and a neighbor associate who is a business executive in her 50s. I thought it to be a good idea to have the up-and-comer go over and introduce himself to the business executive to see how that conversation went. And he did readily. He went over and asked the business executive, "What advice do you have for me here?" And the business executive said immediately, "Soak it up like a sponge." And I thought to myself, this conversation is going swimmingly. But immediately after that, there was ne'er another question asked. And the business executive began talking about her stories and herself, and the up-and-comer began talking about his stories and himself. And I think they were trying to connect and find common ground, but without the asking of questions, I thought that the conversation really didn't advance to the degree that it could have. So later on, the business executive comes over and says, "I ran into that up-and-comer and I gave him a piece of advice." I said, "What's that?" And she said, "He's got to shut the heck up and listen." And I said, "Well, that's great advice. There's no doubt about it." And then I thought to myself, well, didn't I see you do the exact same thing? And so whether it be an up-and-comer or whether it be an advanced business executive, people need to listen better, period. And I know I can be guilty. However, when early in my career, when I was at the Xerox Corporation, they taught us a methodology for being able to advance the business relationships. And the essence of it was all about asking questions. The methodology had an acronym which was SPIN: situation, problem, implication, and needs payoff. But we can go into that later. The important part about it is that each one of those categories were questions. It was all about asking situation questions, implication questions, problem questions, and needs payoff questions. Questions, 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 questions. Question, probe, and advance the relationship. And in this way, you can best connect and come to the end that both parties want. So I wonder to myself, how many leaders really ask questions at all? And if we are asking questions, are we listening to the answers? Or are they just superficial questions in order to engage in some sort of small talk? Or are we really trying to listen in order to advance those relationships? The last lesson was recently, I'm reading this book by Dr. Sanjeev Chopra called Leadership by Example. I'm reading it with a leader in our office. We read it together and then share stories and ideas as part of his development. It's not a book I'm recommending. It's kind of a cliche book itself. But each letter talks about a different chapter. Well, the first chapter is L, and that L in this book is for listening. And as cliche as this book is, I came away with something neat I wanted to share, which was that Dr. Chopra, who is Deepak Chopra's brother, by the way, says that to listen, you don't listen with your ears, you listen with your heart. And that really stuck with me. If we're listening with our ears, our listening becomes superficial. If we're listening with our heart, we're trying to really understand, probe and understand what's under that person's emotions and what their motives and drives are. So when we begin listening with our heart, we can pay attention to what their real needs are. Maybe pay attention for more micro cues or body language or what they're really trying to say to us. And I think in that way, by asking these questions and by caring and listening with our hearts, we can advance our relationships and all be better off. I hope this helps. Thank you very much. See you.